Welcome to our podcast for tonight. I'm just going to check to see if we have any comments and anyone that might be paying attention or listening. If you will just make any comments, that would be really awesome. So on tonight's episode, we are going to do a kind of a fun method related to Friday the 13th. So I think that I've just been trying to kind of think about different podcast episodes that I might be interested in doing. Um, I'm kind of gotten a little bit, I don't know. I don't know that it's as fun as it used to be. So there's a topic that I thought that was fun for me that's more interesting, and it's kind of scary, but it's really more just kind of interesting from the perspective of what people may or may not know about this movie, Friday the 13th, because, my kids like to watch scary movies, and one of my kids asked me about Friday the 13th because on Netflix right now there is they're showing like Friday the 13th from 2009, and one of the guys from Paranormal, if you've ever watched that show, is kind of the protagonist in the show, and I just was like, oh man, this is not what Friday the 13th. We didn't watch it, but this is not what Friday the 13th is really about. So we're going to take some time tonight to really dive into what Friday the 13th is about, and so with that said, um, buckle up, Buttercups. We're in for another episode of Topic Discuss. So what I'm going to try to do, if I can figure it out, is upload um, some video clips if they don't, like, it doesn't cause a problem with my computer, but or with not with my computer, but with YouTube. I don't want to be like demonetized or something because I'm showing movie clips from Friday the 13th. But just to give you a little bit of background about the movie, in 2000 or in 1980, this film was produced. As an independent film, and the screenwriter was Victor Miller. So Victor Miller really was kind of a horror writer that had written other uh, uh, and actually had written some other screenplays from books that were transitioned into movies. One of them, for example, is, I think it's called "See Me by a Stranger" or something like that, or "A Stranger Still Sees You." So so as we kind of like look back in history, the movie was made. The original Friday the 13th was made with um, like $550,000, $550,000. Um, so not much money, but I think when the film opened, uh, it I think it grossed. I'm just looking at my notes, like $24 million, or more than that. And I'll look it up in my notes here. So with that, if you think about it, it was kind of this independent film. It's one of the first independent horror films, and out of nowhere, it kind of came onto the scene, and as a result, it had this incredible success. So um, when people think about Friday the 13th, and I want you just to kind of think to yourself, as you think about Friday the 13th and the show, what's the first thing that comes to mind? What do you originally think about? And uh, so when I think about Friday the 13th, or when I first, thought saw the movie, which was many years ago, I really considered it being all about this killer in a hockey mask, and how that would be really scary, and it really was very scary. But by the way, if there are any comments or super chats, I'll go ahead and share them. But with Victor Miller's writing, I think what's really interesting about this particular movie, or the first time the movie came out, is what the story that Victor was really trying to tell. So I'm going to try to kind of show you. And by the way, a couple of things about what we're going to see tonight. There's a spoiler alert. So if you don't want to see any clips from the original Friday the 13th from 1980, then you need to get off of this now, so that you don't get mad at me for spoiling some of the movie scenes. Number two, I've tried to keep like violence out, but it's implying that a murder is happening, right? So there's this camp, like a girls and boys camp. I don't know if it's like a Christian camp or whatever in the movie. That's really the beginning setting. And in 1958, it cuts to the scene of campers that are at a place called Crystal Lake, and the campers are singing "Kumbaya" and that kind of thing. And you see two of the young campers, like up in the attic of a cabin, get killed, but you don't know who does it. Um, but it's kind of a strange scene, because what's interesting about it is they kind of don't seem originally or initially scared by who they are seeing that's going to kill them. But they do both get killed, and then I think it's many, like maybe even 20 years later, 1978, this Crystal Lake is going to get restored by some of these youth counselors. Well, what we learn later is that that and some of this were from dream sequences, but what we learn later is that uh, a young boy was swimming at Crystal Lake in 1957, so a year before this kind of first youth group, and while he's swimming in the lake, he dies, and he drowns. So so with that said, that kind of sets the backdrop for this movie and the storyline. So there are these new youth counselors going to kind of restore Camp Crystal Lake, and so let's dive into my little PowerPoint, and I hope that it works. I'm just kind of learning this technology with StreamYard. So, like I said, this is the original, and you can kind of see in this PowerPoint, it doesn't show the hockey mask that we are used to as being iconic for Friday the 13th. It was an independent film. Screenwriter was Victor Miller. And I'm just going to take a minute to tell you really quickly what the movie grossed in my notes here. Sorry, I can't see really great without looking closely. So the budget was $550,000. So that's how much they spent on it, and they grossed. So on the opening weekend, they grossed $5.8 million. And then when it was finished domestically at the United States, it grossed $40 million. That's in the 1980s. So that's pretty astounding. It's the 18th highest grossing film in that year. and became one of the highest profile horror releases, right next to The Shining, The Fog, if any of you remember The Fog, from that time. When it went across the world, it grossed more and went up to $60 million. Um, all of that was very unusual for an independent film, and the fact that it went international was also unusual for a independent film. So if you think about it, you go from $550,000 to make the movie, and you gross 60 million. But then the film eventually continued to grow and made 170 or two, maybe even 200 million, and it propelled forward this very significant franchise of films. Um, so Sean Cunningham was the director. I think it was Sean Cunningham. And just a spoiler alert for you and a trigger warning. So here we go. So this is one of the first scenes where a young woman is trying to hitchhike to Crystal Lake, and let me just see if I can. So she's with a hit. She's hitchhiked into this Crystal Lake, and a mysterious individual, picks her up and starts to drive her toward Crystal Lake. And you can see here, I actually tried to create some movie clips with this, but it doesn't look like that's working really well. But in this scene, you can see that I think this character is Alice. You can see that she is happy, and in the movie, she's actually having a conversation with the person who's driving her. So you don't really know who's driving her in this Jeep. You don't really know what's happening. You can see she's smiling, she's happy, and basically, before we go on to that next slide, she gets attacked and eventually gets killed by this individual who's picked her up, which is which is kind of like the third killing scene in this movie. But again, it's odd because you don't know who picked her up. They're driving this car. The individual's kind of wearing this tweed jacket, which is another odd thing. And so, but because you've watched this, you've as a kid, growing up, I didn't see this in 1980. I was way too young to have seen it. So I saw it later. But when you see it later, you really do. You kind of have in your mind this hockey mask character, right? And so, but I want to show you a few things here that might, again, be a spoiler alert for you, in terms of the movie. This next scene here, you can see this hand, and in the movie itself, if you go watch the movie, and this individual is kind of spying on the campers on a dock across the Crystal Lake. But when you look at that hand, it's interesting. There's a big ring on the hand. This is not a very good picture, but you can see there's a big ring on the hand of this killer, and and I've never noticed that until just recently seeing the movie again. That this does not look like the hand of the Jason killer that you're used to seeing with the hockey mask. And then this is a very famous scene. This is actually Kevin Bacon. He's laying in his camp bed, and the killer reaches with their hand and puts it on Kevin Bacon's head, and then shoves an arrow up through the mattress and through the throat of Kevin Bacon, killing Kevin. So this killer is pretty intense and really really strong. And then in this scene, the killer actually throws one of the bodies of the dead person through through the uh, through this glass door, and or through the glass. What do we call it? I mean, it was like a sliding glass door. So this person's strong enough to throw. Oh, so that person was strong enough. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. That person was strong enough to throw this dead body through the window. So again, but you never through all of these killing scenes, all these murder scenes, you never see Jason and the hockey mask. So then, what I want to show you is the last scene of the movie where we're going to reveal who the killer really is. So this woman in a blue sweater is actually the killer, not Jason Voorhees. In fact, the original movie was never about Jason. Um, the hockey mask was not in the first movie. The hockey mask was not in the second movie. And what's funny about this scene is you have this older woman who is kind of like a grandma in this blue sweater, who's had the strength of like putting her hand on someone's head and holding it to the bed like Kevin Bacon's head, and then having the strength to shove an arrow up through the back of Kevin's Bacon neck and through the front of his neck. You're thinking this is Jason, and in the future movies, Jason is very strong and powerful and could do things like that. But in this movie, there's no Jason. There's Jason's mother, and really what's happening is in 1957, Mrs. Voorhees, Pamela Voorhees here. Her son, who's mentally handicapped and has hydrocephalus, she brings him with her to camp, and she's a cook. And in 1957, he drowns because none of the camp counselors are paying attention to him. So she loses her mind and believes that Jason is speaking to her in her mind. And so she then, anytime camp counselors come to Crystal Lake, she kills them because Jason's telling her to kill them. So this is the killer. And you can see that when we see the last scene, she's not very intimidating. Continue to watch. There's a deadly bite there from Pamela Voorhees, again, the lady in the blue sweater. This is my favorite scene right here. See, the funny thing about this is this lady is the killer, throwing bodies through windows, putting axes into people's heads, and this woman is the killer with her little blue sweater, and she's taking the young counselor's head and smashing it into the sand. So anyway, this was a major plot twist in the film, and it is what really kind of really made the movie as popular as it was. But then, later on in the movie had become so successful that it turned into a franchise of films that went all the way to, like I said, 2009. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Jason Voorhees. So the original character, he was never the killer. He was a main antagonist for sure, but his mother was always the killer. because he died in Crystal Lake, drowning in Crystal Lake in 1957. Um, and the hockey mask that we know that's iconic for Friday the 13th and Jason, the hockey mask did not come into play until the third movie. And so in the second movie, in Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason's resurrected somehow, and I'm not going to spend time on talking about how that happened, but Jason comes back to life, but wears like a gunny sack with some holes cut in the eyes. It's not until Friday the 13th Part 3 that a hockey mask is used, and there's a storyline that's built up by the director of that movie, that somehow Jason was a really good and a hockey player, but also was aggressive, and that's why part of like the backstory of why Jason was violent. But the original Jason wasn't violent. The original Jason was a very sad, weak, deformed young boy with, like I said, hypocephalus, I think is what they had said he had in the original film. So it's the reason he drowned. He couldn't swim very well. He really couldn't, speak at an adult level. And so his mom was always kind of taking care of him. But his death sparked her psychosis, and it's her psychosis that actually led to the death of all the counselors at Crystal Lake. There is a scene in the end of Crystal Lake where one of the main characters who survives, the so the main character, we saw the ladies fighting and Mrs. Voorhees with her sweater, and her crazy little face. She actually gets beheaded, and so the counselor who survives cuts off her head, and then ends up in a boat in the middle of the lake. I don't know why that happened in the last scene, but she does, and there's some kind of a dream that she has, where uh, the dead body of Jason Voorhees comes out of the water, which looks a lot like this picture, by the way, when they were making this kind of this mummy. No, in fact, I think this is a mask that was put onto the character who played Jason Voorhees. So he comes up out of the water and attacks her, but it's not a living Jason. He's dead. It's his dead body that comes up out of the water. But the very last scene is this counselor basically says, "Oh, so did you ever find Jason's body?" And they said no, we found everybody else's body, but not Jason's. And she says, "Oh, okay, so he's still there." So that allowed for the spawning of these part twos. But what's interesting is Victor Miller, who was the original writer of Friday the 13th, did not want sequels that included a resurrected Jason. He never intended for Jason to be the killer. The intent was, people that would go to Crystal Lake sometimes would end up with the psychosis like Jason's mother did. And so the whole hockey mask concept and Jason as this serial killer was never part of the original screenwrite, never the intention of Victor Miller, and yet it's the iconic way we think about Friday the 13th. So when you want to dress up for a Friday the 13th character on Halloween, you really should be dressing up in kind of a late 50s grandma with a tight, hairdo from Golden Girls and a blue sweater, not with a hockey mask. So this is kind of the story I wanted to tell about Friday the 13th. The plot twist really. So anyone, if you are on Netflix and you're considering watching Friday the 13th, the 2009 version, I highly recommend not watching it. It's kind of like a frat pad type movie, not very high quality. It does kind of connect back to this original movie, but I would say that about all the Friday the 13th movies. You don't get really the full breadth of, and really the brilliance of the screenwriter of Victor Miller. I'm not saying the acting's great. You saw the scene with the grandma like slamming um, the girl's head into the sand. That wasn't very great acting, and it's comical. But just the whole mystery behind who the killer really is, and that the killer is Jason's mother and not Jason, um, is really the essence of Friday the 13th. All the other movies were really just sequels that riding off the first wave of Friday the 13th's success. So um, that, I believe, is our entire slideshow for Friday the 13th. So if you want to see Friday the 13th, go to Amazon and you can rent it for like $3.99. But watch that 1980s film, and you'll be very pleased with the film. You'll be pleased to see Kevin Bacon, um, and it's funny to see him, so young, so he's in the movie, um, and uh, and then really understand that movie first before you watch any of the others. And again, I wouldn't recommend watching any of the others because they're not true to the form and the genre of the first Friday the 13th. So the original Friday the 13th is not about Jason. It's not about hockey masks. It's about a mother who has psychosis from losing her handicapped son in a drowning accident, and she turns into a serial killer as a result. So Pamela Voorhees is the real killer in Friday the 13th. Thank you for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Topic Discuss.